Hi everyone, Sarah here from Sarah Homfray Embroidery with another stitch sampler video for you, but a little bit different this time because lots of people have asked me if they can see the whole thing that I've stitched so far, and that's a fair point. I only ever show you the little bit I'm working on and it'd be nice to see all of it, so I thought I will show you both of the samplers. And I also thought this was a nice opportunity for those of you joining in with me and stitching all over the world with me on this one to show your samplers as well, so you're not just seeing what I'm doing, you can see what other people are doing as well. So I've got some of those that I am going to show you. I'm excited to show you those ones because quite different from what I do, and it's nice to have a bit of influence from elsewhere, not just look at mine all the time. And then what I'm going to do, so hang around because I'm going to show you how you can fix your samplers to a scroll. If you want to do the scroll project with me and want to put it around a reel, I will show you how you can fix it onto that, because I know some of you have finished and you're at that point already, so I will show you how to do that as well. So I'm working two samplers. I'm doing this one in my hand in a kind of slow stitch, sort of nice and relaxed way to learn lots of different stitches. So if you're not seeing this project yet, this is the first video you've come to see, you can have a go at this along with me. Got all of these stitches in a playlist. I'll put that up at the end of this video if you want to come and join in and learn some embroidery stitches in a nice relaxed and mindful way. Then you can do that on that one. And if you're not a fan of holding it in your hand or it hurts your hands to do that, then I'm also doing one in a frame as well, so you can frame up your fabric and work this way too if you want to. So I'm going to show you both of these. They've got the same stitches on, but obviously in a different format, and I can just talk about the differences between the two. So as I've already mentioned, if you do have problems with your hands and you find that they're hurting to hold the fabric, sometimes that can happen. You might find working in a hoop much better. You've got your hands free and you're not grabbing the frame all the time and holding the frame really tightly. So that's why I've got one in this frame here, and I've just done it in a square frame. It started in a ring frame, so you can do this any size you want. You can change when you fill it up, you can change another bit of fabric and start another one if you want to, but then I went to a square frame because I was running out of space to show these stitches. So I've just applied the fabric the same way that I would for a slow stitch sampler. So I've just layered a few fabrics underneath just to make it a little bit more interesting. You can just do your stitches on a plain bit of fabric, but it's quite nice to turn it into something. So I'm just going to go through what I've got here really. So I've got a cotton backing. This is a sort of creamy colour, and I've got a calico on the back, just a plain cotton fabric on the back. So I've got my two layers. I like to have a backing on most of my embroidery. It's just a bit more substantial to stitch on. You can hide the ends of your threads nice and easily, and it just helps you to stitch a bit more neatly, I think, because you've got that firmer surface to work on. So on top of that, I've laid a few other different fabrics here. So I've got a nice patchwork cotton here with a little flower motif on it. Got an older one here. This is a bit more vintagey, little sort of ribbon of that. Got a couple of those on here, and a bit of yellow fabric. This is from my silk shading book. This is the Vases project in my silk shading book, and I chopped it down recently and I got a lot of fabric around the edge, so I kept that. Quite nice to use. And another bit of quilting cotton here, and a little bit of a kind of lace broderie anglais kind of edging, and I've layered those up in no particular order, just whatever I like the look of, and I've basted them down, and then I've done my stitching on top. So I'm just going to go over some of the stitches that we did. So this was the first one. This is the first video, and this is seeding, so some different kinds of seeding. So just these little scattering of stitches around to kind of fill in an area but not really solidly, and you can just do all sorts of different shapes with it. And if you sort of see the stitches that I'm doing and think, oh, I could do this with it, but Sarah hasn't done it, am I allowed to do it? Yes, you're allowed to do it. Make up your own designs and your own patterns. If you think, oh, that's really nice, I'd like to do this, then go ahead and do it. This is your sampler. You do it however you would like to do it. So I've got single ones, I've got double ones. I made little triangles with it. These kind of little Z shapes, zigzag shapes, quite nice. Little U shapes here, little V shapes. And you can even do it with your cross stitch as well. So it's just taking a little stitch and scattering it around and just giving a bit more interest to an area. This is my cross stitch that I did here. You don't have to do cross stitch on an Ada fabric, on a counted fabric. You can just do it in your normal surface embroidery. Bit of running stitch. Do like a bit of running stitch. Such a simple stitch, but don't overlook it. It's really good for lots of things, and you can weave things in and out of it, and you can whip around it. You can do a thread around the running stitch, so you can turn it into lots of other things as well, and really great for just holding your fabric in place. This is in no particular order. This is not the order the videos are in, by the way, but that doesn't matter, doesn't? You can pick this up at any point that you want to. We've got herringbone stitch here, which is kind of like a big crossing each other. Really nice for the edges if you want to cover up some edges of a fabric you've applied. Want to put a stitch over it to hold it down. This is a really nice one for that. That's herringbone. We've got a blanket stitch here, which is good for doing the same, and I'll show you a different purpose for that on the handheld band one that I'm going to show you. So this is a blanket stitch. Blanket because the stitches are wider apart. You put them close together, it's a buttonhole stitch, but they're worked the same way. So this is this one here, a little bit of running stitch along the edge. This is rapidly becoming one of my favourites. And because I did it for this series, really, I don't use it a lot previously, but I did that to make this sampler video. I thought I really like this stitch, and it's appearing in quite a few of my projects now. So this is a feather stitch. So it's like a kind of buttonhole sort of fly stitch. There's lots of variations on the same thing. You change them slightly, they get a different name. But you make these beautiful loops and you connect them to the previous one, and you can keep going one way and keep going back the other. So you can make these as long as you want to. That's a lovely decorative stitch if you want a nice row of something really pretty. That's feather stitch, that's a lovely one. Back stitch here, another of my favourites, dead simple stitch, but really nice. We can do some lettering with that, which I might do later on in a video later on this project. There's my running stitch again, and my spirals. Love doing slow stitch spirals. Whole video on slow stitch spirals if you want to know how to do those. Really nice in a variegated thread, so a thread that changes colour throughout. We've got some chain stitch here. So chain stitch is a really interesting stitch. You can do them singly, and they're called detached chains because they're not attached to each other, they're detached. So detached chains here, and then if you do them in a row, here's a row of it, you can join it up and make a long row of chain stitch. You can change the direction of it as well. So I can do long sort of zigzags here and little short ones. So again, you can cover the edge of it, which you might not necessarily think about. You can weave a thread through it, you can wrap a thread around it. Very versatile stitch to do, so nice one to learn chain stitch. And then if I go down here, we have got, up here, that one's fly stitch. Some of them look similar and you'll see why in a second. So this is fly stitch, well up there with my favourite stitches. You can do them singly, you can make rows of them, you can make little leaves out of them, you can put the stitches together and you can get a closed fly stitch. So this is an open one, this is a closed one, and if you just follow the shape of a leaf you can get these beautiful leaves with these little stems down the middle. So easy to make a leaf with just one stitch. So that's a fly stitch there and different variations of it. The reason I was peering at that one, so I'm going to go over here to this one. So this is a fern stitch, which can look similar, but it's constructed in a different way, and again you can do different things. If I do a single fern stitch, it looks like that, and then if I do rows of them together, it looks like that. So lots you can do with that stitch as well. So a slight difference between that and the fly stitch. This is a fun one, Turkish rug stitch. You can make these little loops and you can change a kind of thread that you do it in, and you can make this wonderful really fluffy texture here, and you can do a big block of that and you can trim it and cut it to shape, and you can make hedges and trees and bushes and really exciting things like that. Santa's beards, I know Santa's beards is a popular one in this stitch. So there's a little bit of Turkish rug stitch. So let's go over to this side of the sampler now. So we have some star stitches. So we've got star stitches and eyelet stitches. Look a little bit similar, but if you look closely, the eyelets are flat. All the stitches go down into the hole in the middle, and the star stitches, the stitches cross each other. It's two crosses over the top of each other, and you get a really nice texture on that. So if you want something that looks a bit flowery but is a bit more textured, you could do a star stitch. If you want something to settle into the background a little bit, you could do an eyelet stitch. And the last one that I have on this one at the moment is French knots, colonial knots and pistol stitches. So they're all variations on a theme. So here's my French knots in the red, and then we've got the green knots. So the colonial knots is an extra twist in a colonial knot, so it makes the knot a little bit bigger. So if you want a bigger knot, try a colonial knot. And then if you put both of those stitches on a little stem, you get these pistol stitches, which are great for the stamens on flowers. really good for that, little tufts of grass, things like that. So you can do these pistol stitches. So I did a little grouping there just to show how you can change a stitch and easily make it into something else. Now this one is nearly finished. I'm not going to get much more on that frame, so I've got some more stitches I'm going to do. I'm going to keep going with these stitches and fill that up till it's really covered in lots of stitches. So I've got a square bit of fabric. You'll see in some of the pieces that I'm going to show you shortly that you have done that you can turn these into all sorts of things. You could make little foam cases out of them, you could make a little quilt out of it, you can make a little cushion out of it. So there's still things that you can make even if it's only a little piece like that. I've also got my 20 things to make with your slow stitching video as well. You can have a look at that and see if there's anything to inspire you in there. So let's have a look at those stitches on the band sampler. So what do I mean when I say band sampler? So it is a band of samples. Does what it says on the tin. Quite an old traditional way of making a sampler. You'll see band samplers, and they'll start at the top and they'll sort of stitch all the way down, quite methodical, more methodical than I'm doing mine, and just make rows and rows, and you just have this whole band of fabric that's got all these different stitches on it, and it's a sampler and a really good way to try out lots of different techniques without worrying about making a finished piece. You just want somewhere you're allowed to play, you're allowed to practice your stitches. So that's what this is, and I thought we'd do this in a bit more of a kind of a slow stitching, chilled out, mindful kind of a way. So if you want to have a go at it on this, you can, and we're not going to use a frame for this. I'm just doing this in my hand. So let's have a look at the stitches on this one. So again, my 2 layers of fabric. There is my calico cotton on the back, and I've got this same yellow cotton on the front as a backing fabric, and I've layered my fabrics up on this one as well, exactly the same that I have done on the frame, but I've just done this one in my hand. So the good thing about doing it in your hand, if you can, is that you use a much looser tension. I have quite a tight tension when I stitch. Everything goes a bit usually because I'm on a deadline, I've got to get it done, I've got to get a video up for Friday, I haven't got time to mess around, and everything gets a little bit tight. So if you do find you've got tight tension, this is a really good way of just loosening off and just relaxing a little bit, because you're doing it in your hand, you can't pull it tight because the whole thing will screw up into a big ball. So if that is a problem, this is a great thing to do. You can also roll this up and stuff it in your bag and take it with you without loads of equipment and frames and things like that. So that's a good reason for doing it in your hand. Again, if it hurts your hand, then don't do it, put it in a frame, it's absolutely fine. So let's just go through some of these stitches that I've got on here. So here's my running stitch again. I like putting it around the edges of the bits of fabric, holds it in place, and then you can put something down the middle of it. So I've got my seeding here, different types, my single, my double, my little V shapes, a little U shape, the little triangles are here, the little zigzag ones are here, and my little cross stitches are over here. I've actually put an extra one on this as well that's not in the video and not on that other one, and it's just 2 little straight stitches. So I've got the 2 together here, and if you move them together and just offset them, you get this. So I've just done that and then just offset them, and that makes for quite an interesting little shape there. So very easy to make up your own version if you want to have a little play in your sampler, see what you can come up with. So I would call that a seeding stitch also. I've got my cross stitch in here, get a bit more of that later. Done a bit more work on this one, try to fill in some areas a little bit, so I'm going to jump around a little bit on this. Here's my blanket stitch, so it's going around the edge of this piece of fabric. I do have a video on this and how you turn the corners as well, by the way, in this, so check out my video on how to turn corners in embroidery if you want to know how to get round a corner. So what's this one here? So these are the eyelets, so these are the ones that will go down to the middle. Here I'm just going to move it along a little bit, so lots of eyelets. I've got my French knots and my colonial knots and my little pistol stitches in here. There's a little white flower here, don't know if you can see that, and I've just put my pistol stitches off that little white flower. So you can use the patterns in your fabric to sort of say where you want to put the stitches to help you decide where to put them. You can respond to the patterns in the fabric. There's a little bit that's gone on here, so there's a bit more blanket stitch around that and a bit of a running stitch. Some more cross stitches here, different sizes, rows of single ones, change the colour. This is an interesting one here. So this is a herringbone stitch. Where else? There's my, I'm just going to bring that bit in at this point. So it's this stitch here, this herringbone stitch, and this is just a single one. But if you put 2 rows of herringbone stitch on top of each other and you just offset them, you get this one here. So you can see the pink ones underneath and that brighter reddy salmony colour is on the top, and you just get this really beautiful effect if you layer these stitches on top of each other. This is the feather stitch, so I've just gone right down the middle of that little bit of fabric with the feather stitch, nice and open so you can see the fabric underneath is showing through those stitches. I've got my back stitch here and a little bit of running stitch, done it kind of around that motif, so again think about your fabric underneath, respond to your fabric. A little bit of fern stitch in here. These are star stitches, so these are the nice textured stitches. I wish you could touch that. It was really nice. This is feather stitch also, this is upside down. So you can turn these things around, they don't have to have a way up, a right way up. So that one's actually upside down as you're looking at it. A little bit of the Turkish rug stitch here. Tried that in a different thread, so this is in a stranded cotton, 6 strands of a stranded cotton. Will look different to a wool and will look different to a perle, so you can change your threads throughout this thing, have a little play with them, see what they do. You don't have to ask, you know, can I use this, can I use that? Try it out, see what it does. So this is the blanket stitch, but it's actually on the edge of the sampler now. Can you see that on the edge? So if you don't like these raw edges, if you're not a fan, you can stitch along them. You could do your stitches much closer together, so you've got more of a buttonhole stitch and you've got a nice solid edge to your stitching. So a really nice edging stitch, the blanket stitch, as well as going around the different shapes. You can actually do that one on the edge. This one I haven't done yet. This one is coming up. So this one is called a Rhodes stitch. So it's similar to the star stitch and it goes around in a circle and you get this big pile of stitches. That one is coming up. If you're watching this in the future, that one will be up already. I was practicing a little bit, see what it looked like on there. A little bit of running stitch. Here's my fern stitch right through the middle here. And you can see how I've picked up on these shapes in this bit of fabric. It's got this really nice kind of patchwork pattern in it. And I've used my running stitch just to outline that and just throw my umbrella away, just to bring that pattern out a little bit and emphasize the pattern. So you can use your stitches to do that. A little bit of chain stitch along the bottom, and you can see the raw edges on this one. So I've got more space on this one than I have on my frame, so I'm going to come back and fill in a little bit more with this and mix my stitches up a bit, so there's still a little bit there waiting for an appropriate stitch. I'll come back and do that. Here's some fly stitches here. And here's the row of the fly stitches, so the single fly stitches, and this is when you put them together. We've got some more herringbone up here, 2 rows of herringbone down each side of this bit of fabric to hold that in place, and I could do something down the middle if I wanted to. Got my detached chain stitches, and a little zigzag chain to go over the edge of something. And then I've got a couple of star stitches on here. And then you'll notice the rest of it is not stitched on yet, it's all ready to go. So I've just got some things basted on, layered up, ready for some more stitching and ready for some future videos with lots more stitching on them. So I'm just going to hold the whole of this up to the camera. Now that's where my finger is where I've stitched up to. So that's my little stitch sampler so far, and I'm going to show you the back as well. I really like the back. I think the back is really interesting. It's a completely different thing on the back. If I showed you that and said what's on the front, you wouldn't guess that. So I quite like that. You may want to cover that up. I'll talk about that in a second. But that's what it looks like so far. And then I've got all that I can work on as well. And I'm just going to keep adding fabric on until I've run out of stitch ideas, basically. We have a video on how to join fabric if you want to see that and see what how you can make your sampler a bit longer. Some people I know have got very long samplers. And they go, yeah, when do I stop? How long do I make it? So you can stop and start a new one if you want, or you can just keep adding bits of fabric and keep extending to it, and you've got a really lovely example of lots of different stitches that you've learned. And if you want to stitch, you can pick this up, refer to it, go, what stitch do I like, what would be nice, and it's all on here for you to use. So that's enough of my pieces. Let's have a look at your pieces, because some of them are very different to what I've done, and it's really inspiring for me to see them as well, and to see what different things people are doing with this idea that I've had. And it's really wonderful to see what you've come up with, because they're not just on frames and they're not just in samplers. People have made different things with them. We've got some quilts in there, we've got some books and book pages and some book covers. What else is there? A little phone case. So you can make whatever you like out of this. You don't have to keep it in the format that I've got it in. So let's have a look at those now, and then I'll come back and show you how to finish them off. So thank you so much to everybody who sent the pictures of their samplers in. They're really, really fabulous. I love them. I love the ideas that you've had. Some really interesting things there, and the fabrics as well. Just to see some different fabrics from the ones that I look at all day long is really wonderful to see. So thank you so much for sharing those. I hope it's inspired you watching as well. And let's have a little look at how you can finish your samplers off, because I know some people are at that stage. So the first thing I want to mention is the back. If you don't like the back, I think it's wonderful. I love seeing the stitches on the back, and that's got a whole texture of its own and a story of its own as well. You can have a look and see how things are constructed from the back, and a lot of time historical pieces, people can look at those and work out how they did the stitches by looking at what's on the back. So I think it's really interesting, but if you don't like the back, you can cover it up. I'm just going to show you with this one. So this is the other end of the sampler, but it's a good opportunity to show you. So you can put a backing on it. So you could choose a nice bit of fabric that went on the back and covered that up. And you can either do a running stitch all the way around the edge and have a backing on it like that. You've still got your raw edges, but I like those again. But if you don't like those, you could do these face to face. So you put right sides together. You could sew around on a sewing machine if you want. You can sew around here, and then you can turn it inside out, and all your edges are hidden inside. Your raw edges are hidden inside. So if you're a quilter, you might want to do that. I know quilters, no, not a huge fan of the raw edges. If you want to put your little sampler around a bobbin, if you've got a bobbin like this, a wooden bobbin or a reel, they go really nicely around that. If you don't have a bobbin, you can't get a bobbin, you can make your own. This is one that I have made. Just unwind that. Caught around there. So this was the inside of a kitchen foil or cling film, something like that. It's the tube from the inside. They're really strong, the ones that you get for kitchen foil, and I've just cut that up and made a little tube out of it. And then I found these little wooden things that I've got on the end here. I just happen to have those, but you could cut some round cardboard out, you could cover it in some nice wrapping paper, and you could put those on the end, and you can make yourself a really nice reel. So quite easy to make one. I could cover that in paper as well, or I could paint it too. That would be really nice. you can go and find yourself a twig. We've been doing this in the forest class. Find yourself a nice little bit of wood and you can just wrap it around the bit of wood, and I think that's really lovely way. So a bit more of an organic one there, whatever you can wrap it around basically. You can just roll it if you want to. You don't have to have anything down the middle. They're quite nice rolled, they're very tactile like this. You can squish it, they just feel lovely. So I've just rolled it up, tied it with a little bow, and that just sits like that. And I've got another one here that I folded, so this one, just undo it for you. It's got a little book that I made with it, and this was my ideas. I did a little sort of sketchbook of it. Let's put it the right way up. I sketched a few little patterns from some leaves and from trees, from the little paper I had, a bit of running stitch, some spirals on it, some little detached chains, and I made that little book, and then I stitched my piece from the ideas in the book. So I'll open this one out. So that one looks like that. It's that long, and then I've just folded that one up into 3. So I did it, and then I put it on there, and then I've just wrapped it around there and tied it around there. So there's lots of different ways that you can finish these if you don't have a roll, but I'm just going to show you what to do if you do have one of these. So this is one that I've put together ready to stitch, but I've not actually done any stitching on it yet. But this is my little sampler of what to do. So this one has just got some Velcro on it, so it's sticky Velcro. Got some here. £3 a box for a metre of it, very cheap. And you get hook and loop, but make sure it's got the sticky side on it, stick on. So you just peel it off, you stick one side on your bobbin, it's quite strong glue, it stick on there quite nicely, and then you just stick the other side on the fabric. I suggest you put the hook bit onto the bobbin and the bit without the hooks on it onto the fabric, so that when you take this off and you're stitching, it doesn't stick to everything. Get that bit out of the way with the hooks on it, and then all you do is you just press that on there. So you can take it off if you want to stitch on it, and you can put it back on, and then you can just roll it around. So that's one way you can deal with it. Another way is to tie it on. I quite like to be able to take it off in case I want to add anything onto it, or I want to show somebody, and then put it back on again when I'm not working on it. This is my little fungi one, forest fungi foraging. I'll show you this end here. So you can do this in a couple of ways. So I've got a little bit of fabric just to demonstrate. So if you want to, you finished, you know you finished it, and you're not going to do any more, and you've moved on and you're doing another one, then you can put it on permanently. So you can just get a little bit of fabric like that. You can wrap it around the reel. You can sandwich that in between there like that, and then you could just do some running stitches across here, or some decorative stitches across here, and then it's fastened on. It will go round the roll, but it won't come off the roll. Alternatively, you could just sew one side on. You could just sew it onto there, and then when you bring this around here, you could put some little press studs on it, some fastenings, some little buttons maybe, and you could just put some buttons on there, and you could actually clip it on so that you're able to undo those. You can take that off and you can take it off the roll. So that's one way you can deal with it. The other way is to make yourself some little ties. I've got 2 here, so if you fold one, and you could sew it onto here. I'm just going to pin it, but you could sew that onto there. So, and then you can just tie that around your reel like so. Could make that a little bit tidier than I have, and then you can wrap it around there, and you can hide those on the inside. So that would be a way that you can fasten it on but be able to take it off if you want to. So another way that you can deal with that, and you can have it so you can take it on and off. I've got this big one here. This is my super duper one. Put it to this camera here. This one is definitely work in progress. It's got quite a lot of stitching on it, but it's not finished. So this one, and this is a nice way of displaying it actually. If you've got a bobbin with a hole in it, you can put a dowel through it, you can hang it up and you can have them down the wall. They look really fabulous like that. And this one has just been fastened on with some elastic. So I've cut 2 lengths, I've sort of stretched it and then I've sewn it. In fact, if I take it off you can see it. So just make sure it does go over the bobbin, that you can get it off. So just 2 pieces of elastic, and I've actually hidden that in the joint here. I've put this ribbon over both ends and I've trapped it inside. So I've sewn it to the fabric, trapped it in that and then sewn that ribbon on. So that makes a really nice neat finish if you want a nice neat finish on yours. And then I've got the 2 bits of elastic, just again stretch it around, make sure it will fit around the bobbin, and I can take it off if I want to work on it, or I can put it back on the bobbin and roll it up for storage when I've finished. So I hope you're inspired by all of those lovely scrolls. Thanks to everybody who sent a picture of theirs in. It was wonderful to see them. Hopefully you've got some new ideas that you can have a go on your own scrolls. And if you want to have a go at this project, you've not joined in yet, you can see this playlist up here. All of the stitches that I have done are in that playlist, and the new ones will be going in that as well. And if you want some ideas of what you can make with your slow stitching other than a scroll, you can check out this playlist down here. Lots of different things that you can do with your slow stitching. If you've enjoyed this video, you found it inspiring, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time.